Hi guys, welcome to Salesforce Troop. Today we'll learn how to build a stopwatch with state management using LWC. So let's go to our VS Code. I'm in my VS Code. Let's create a component. Always be our first task. I'll go to the command palette, select create lightning web component, and I'll give this name stopwatch for my component name. I'll take the default path. Now my component is ready. So the first thing what we're gonna do is we'll change the meta tags, and I'll just paste the tags here. This is very common. Is exposed to means your component will be exposed, and which target it will be exposed. It will be exposed to a lightning app page. You can add your record page or any other page here. So that's the first thing. The second thing what we're gonna do here is in the template we'll just create the layout quickly. I'll say div class. I'm using SLDS classes today. SLDS around him. So I have not using the lightning card. Basically here there is a reason for that. So I'm using a div and explicitly using a SLDS card that will give me a border around my div, and I'm giving some padding around the card basically, and that is of size medium. Medium is a 16 pixel. And let's quickly add some heading. I'll take h2 tag and I'll say stopwatch, and we can add some styling here as well. I can say SLDS class, SLDS margin bottom, so that my heading should not touch the body. I'm giving the margin bottom of size medium again. Now my heading is ready, my component is ready. Let's deploy this and paste this to our org. Now the component is deployed. Let's go to our org. I'm in my Salesforce Troop app, and let me edit this app page. On the right hand side, if it's deployed successfully, we'll be able to search our component name stopwatch. I can drag it to the first column. So now you can see the card is coming, the text is coming, that is our heading stopwatch. So our second task is done. First was the creation of component, second task is to place the component basically. So now we can see our card is here. Now let's go and write logic for our stopwatch. So let's go to the JS file and let's see what we can do here. First thing, we need a button on the screen basically that will start my timer. I'll go here, I'll say div class SLS around medium size, and within this I'm gonna create the lightning button group. I'm using the group because if I'm creating a couple of buttons, it's better to go with the button group because I need 3 buttons going forward, one for start, then for stop, then for reset. That's why I'm using a lightning button group here. Lightning button, first button we are creating of variant success. Success gives us the green color basically. The label I want is start, and the action on click of this is on click, call the action handler. Now our button is ready. On click of this it will call this handler. Let's go to our JS file and create this handler. Handler is basically a method. Now on click of that it gets called, and on click of this what we're gonna do is we'll call a method called Settimer. So this method will get called up, and below this action handler I'll write the logic of Settimer. So we know how set time or set interval works, right? So it's a browser property, window property basically. So I'll say set interval. I'm just calling a set interval. It takes a callback. I'm using arrow function here, and I'll say this, whatever comes here, call this after every second. And the second parameter, it takes the time basically, like after how much timeout you want to call this method again and again, and it's in the millisecond. So if I write 1000 millisecond, it means it's every second it will call this function. Okay, so what we can do is we can create a property called, let's say, counter, and I initialize that counter with a 0, and every time this counters increment, I'll say this dot counter equal to this dot counter plus 1. You can think of doing the shorthand notation as well, but I'm more comfortable with the clear writing. So I'm using this dot counter equal to this dot counter plus 1. So every time once you click the button, it comes to here, it starts the interval. Every time our counter gets incremented, and what we're gonna do here, we'll go to our HTML, and in the HTML we'll just print our timer. Okay, so what we can do here is div and counter. We are just printing the counter right now. Let's deploy this and see if it's working or not. So it's deployed now. Let's go to our org, refresh the page, and now you can see that I just refreshed it again. So now button is there, start, and count is there. Let me zoom it. Yeah, so the number is there, the button is there. Let me click the button. Now you see it start incrementing the counter, and it's incrementing every second, right? So our first logic is correct, but the actual challenge is, suppose this is our stopwatch, seconds are going on the screen, right? If I go to another tab and come back, now you see it reset it to 0. It's not holding when we start the timer. That is the actual challenge that we are facing, and that's what I'm gonna explain in this whole video, how you can achieve that. But before that, I want to show on the screen like a time in a proper format, like 0 seconds, or if it goes above in minutes or in hours, so it should show 1 hour 30 minutes or 20 seconds, some meaningful message, right? So let's write a util or like a basic function that will convert our seconds into a proper hours or minutes or seconds. Okay, so let's go back to our VS Code. We know now our functionality is working at least. So what we can do is, first we'll create another method called second to hours and minutes. It will take the time basically that we have in the seconds, and first we'll confirm that b that is coming is a number format, it's not in a string format, so we are just explicitly converting it. And then what we're gonna do is we'll say hours equal to math.floor. So it's a JavaScript function or a method that will downgrade while downgrade the number. I'll explain you what it means basically. So if you have a decimal part, I'll go to the console. Suppose you have a number, I'll write it directly, math.floor, and I'll say I have 5.6. So it remove the or ignore basically the decimal part and take the lower integer part, that is 5 here in this case. Even though if it's a 5.9, it takes the lower integer part, right? Similarly, there is another method called seal that will take the other way, like it will take the higher integer number basically, so it basically round it off. Okay, so what we are doing is ignore the decimal part and take the lower downgraded integer. So we'll say whatever the number is coming, divide by 3600, it will gives us in the R. Then we'll go to minute, we'll get convert into the minute. We have formula percentile 36,000 by 60. Just write it inner. I'll just copy paste. And for second, we just do the modulus like 3600 modulus 60. It will gives us a second. And now what we want is when the R is 1, it should show R, not R's. If it is 2, then it should show R's. For that, what we have done here is already did that conversion, because this is the basic calculation, so I don't want to explain much. So I'm just checking if the R is greater than 0 and R is available and R is equal to 1, show the R, otherwise R's. Similarly, if there is no hours or no minutes, just make it as empty, it will not show anything on the screen. Similarly with the minutes, similarly with the seconds, and this will return the data in the form of hours, minutes and the seconds. So to test that, what we can do here is can create a property, or we can just pass the counter as it is. We can say this dot second and let's deploy this and see, because once it starts with 1, we don't have hour and minute conversion, we'll get only seconds. So now my component is deployed. Let's see how it behaves on the screen. Let's refresh the page. Start. Now you see it's showing 1 second, but it's hiding and showing immediately. It's not changing. For that, we need to do something. Let's go to our VS Code. Let's see why it's happening like this. So by seeing the code, we get to know the problem. So I'll just try to explain the problem right now. When the first time it's 0 plus 1, it will go and it will return 1 second. And the 1 second is assigned to the counter, right? So next time when we pass the data, it will go like this: string of 1 second plus 1, right? So it's not a number, it's a string, and here it will fail basically. So what we need to do is we need to take another property and we'll say it as a timer, and I initialize it as a string of 0. And here what I'm gonna do is I'll say this dot timer equal to this dot counter, and will not update the counter with the string. We'll keep the counter as it is, the number. So it start with 0, 0 plus 1, 1, 1 plus 1, 2, like that. It will, the counter will increment in the number format, and only the timer will get the concatenated value or a proper string value, and will show that string the screen. Now let's go and deploy this and see. Now it's deployed. Page. Start it again. Sometime because of the cache it didn't work, so let's hit the start again. And now you can see it's coming with the S when it's more than 1. 7 second, 8 second, 9 second. Let me pause the video. Let's wait for a 1 minute, then we'll see whether the minute is coming on the screen or not. Now you can see that it's showing us 1 minute, 8 second, 9 second, 10 second. Like if we wait for an hour, it will come with a 1 hour, 2 hour and 3 hour on the screen. So now our functionality is correct. Let's go back to our VS Code, and now we're gonna implement our other functionality like stop and reset. So I'll just copy paste the button, and we need two more buttons, so I'll just copy paste the same button. I'll change the variant to destructive, and this destructive gives us the red color, so we'll call this label as stop, and the action handler I'll keep it same. The third one I'll take the variant as brand, and I'll say it as reset. Brand gives us a blue color. So now we'll go to the function that is action handler, and we need to figure out when which button has been clicked. Okay, so for that we'll receive an event from the button, and here what I'm gonna do is I'll take out the label from the event. I'll use the object destruction. I'll say label equal to event dot target. Now I have a label. Label tells me which button has been clicked, so I'll do if label equal to start, then run this dot start timer, and similarly I'll copy paste this. You can use if else as well. Stop, and similarly reset. And what we want is on click of stop should stop our timer, and on click of reset we want our timer to be resetted back to the 0 and the counter should be 0. So for the reset we already know we need to reset the property this dot counter 0 again, this dot timer to 0 again, right? But we want to stop the timer as well, and in JavaScript to stop the timer we need the reference of the timer. So we're gonna create another property here, a timer reference, and whenever the timer runs for the first time, right, we'll store the reference of the timer. So it's basically a number, okay, that tells us if suppose there are 10 timers are running, how you get to know which timer you want to stop, right? So timer reference store the basically the reference of the timer that is running. I am storing that reference in the timer ref property, and what I'm gonna do is when we click the stop functionality or stop button, I'll say window or clear interval and pass this reference. Clear interval is a method that we use to stop the set interval, but you need to pass the timer reference. So we are passing the timer reference, and similarly for the reset. So now our functionality is ready for the stop and the reset. Let's try to source and see. Till now we haven't talked about the state management. We are just building the our stopwatch, and we can quickly add the css file as well to make our component a little bit better. I created a css file. I can add some, I'll say heading class, and I'll say font size 30 pixel. You can change it according to your need. So I'll say color as 2956 and not column 6 color, and then I need the font weight so that my header looks a little bit bolder. I'll say the 700 stroke, that is font weight. And the another class I can use is for the timer. So I'll say timer, and I want my timer to have the font size 30 pixel. I want some padding around it, and the padding I want only on the left and the right hand side, so I can use a shorthand. I'm using ram equal to 16 pixel. Now we're gonna use this timer class or this div for the heading, and the heading class. Let's deploy this. So the component is deployed now. Let's go back to our page. Let's refresh the page. Now you can see our heading is little bit bigger of green color. We have our text. We have 3 buttons. So let's test out our buttons functionality. I click on start. Started with 1 second. Now if I click stop, it should stop immediately there itself. And now if I click reset, it should be reset it to the 0 again. So now we have tested all functionality. Now we come to the actual challenge that we are solving in this video is the state management. So now I started the timer. As soon as I'll go to the another tab and come back, my timer stops. For that we need to write some logic by which we can figure out like where my timer reach. It should not reset it. So we need to store the state somewhere. And today we're gonna learn how we can store the state in the local storage. So let's go to our VS Code. So now we have to store the state, but this state should be dynamic, and dynamic state you can't store in the local storage or anywhere else. So here we're gonna use a logic of date and time, because we know when we click the button what was the date and time that point of time, and when we come back we also know at what point I come back to my page again, right? So what we're gonna do here is we'll refactor our set timeout here. I'll say const start time equal to what I can store here. First what I'm gonna do is I'll play with the set interval itself. Whenever we'll start this, I'll just comment this out, write a new logic, because here the counter will not help us, right? As I said, the counter suppose reach to the 3. I change the tab and come back. I don't know at what point the counter is now, right? Because once I'll go away from the screen, my local state will go off. Even though I store my counter in the local storage, I don't know what will be the next counter step, right? So we're gonna use the date time. So I'll write const seconds difference equal to we're gonna use the new date function, and from that date function we'll take the time, and we'll say from this time minus start time dot get time. What should be the start time here? And here what we're gonna do is we'll create another property on the top. We'll say whenever the component loads, check window dot local storage dot get item. Get item is used to fetch the property use from the local storage, and the property name you have to pass it here. So I'll give the property name start timer. So whenever the component loads, it will go to the local storage and fetch the start timer. It will see if it's there, it will bring the value, otherwise it will return the undefined. So store time on the first time it will be undefined. Come and we click on our start button, and what we're gonna do here is we'll say this dot store time store, store time. We'll say okay, if store time is there or not. If it's not there, we have to store it, right? So what we can do is we can use the or condition and say this dot start timer handler, and we'll create another method on the top. This method will only called once whenever the store time is not there and you are triggering the stopwatch for the first time basically. So I'll say within this const start time equal to new date. So immediately we'll take that point of time you click the button, and we'll store that time into the local storage immediately using the set item method, and we'll say store it to a property start timer. What time you want to store is the start time. So we stored it and we immediately return the start time. So once you click the timer, if something is already there in the local storage, it pick that, otherwise it will call this method and take the start time. And it's always better to convert the date again in a proper format. From the local storage it comes in the string format, so it's okay to convert back into the proper date format using date. I wrap this method in the new date. Now I have the start date, basically start time, and I'm checking within the time interval, check the second differences, the time the interval reach minus the time it got started. Basically it gives us the difference, right? So once we get the seconds, we'll say this dot timer, and we'll call the same functionality here, dot counter. This will return the data. Need to pass this dot counter. Basically we are not using counter, and this data is in form of millisecond basically, so we need to convert into the seconds, divide it using 1000, and we'll do the math.floor here as well. Now we get the data in the seconds, we are passing the data to seconds, that will convert the data in the proper second, hour, and this minutes, and it's stored in the timer. So let's deploy this and see first our counter is working as expected or not. So the component is deployed, and let's start the watch now, and it's working. And now we can quickly go and check to our local storage whether the data is stored there or not. I'm in the local storage, and our property name here is start time, so you can see the time I started here, all are storing here. Okay, you are thinking it's of two time, maybe I tried yesterday as well with some other key name start time, that's why it's doing that name. Now let's stop this, working fine. Let's start this. It's restarting, it's not starting from where I left basically. Okay, stop this and let's reset it, and that is okay, fine. Let's start this. Now it started. I'll go to new tab and come back. It is resetting again because on load we are not fetching the data, right? So need to do something there as well. Let's go to our VS Code. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna use the lifecycle hook, connected callback. What it will do is whenever the component loads, it will check is there any data already stored in local storage. If yes, yeah, some data is there already stored, just call the set timer again. It means the timer is running. Okay, and what we're gonna do is on click of stop, basically we're gonna remove the timer. And to remove the timer, what we can do is can say this window dot local storage remove item, and the timer name start timer. We're just removing the timer from the local storage. Start timer is there, Yes, now let's deploy this. See now if it's working or not. Now it's deployed. Let's go to page, refresh the page.